everyone, it's AJ from Strathmore Creative. Today I'm going to be showing you with these Holbein Colored Pencils how to create hair and color it in and render it, especially bright pink hair because there is not one universal tutorial. So the midtone is the rose that I'm using here. I've slowed this down so you can see. My highlights are cream and the secondary highlight is coral, so it can be nice and shiny. The shades include wine red, burgundy, grape, which is the darkest shade, and mahogany to give it a little bit more natural look. For the low light, I used this color called Sea Fog, and I used the Prismacolor Colorless blender. I'll also be using the Strathmore 80-pound toned gray paper, which is not the heaviest kind of paper that I could find, but I wanted to see how versatile it was because it was what I had pictured in my mind. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you a time lapse afterwards. One of the most important parts of learning how to render any drawing is where your light direction is going to come from, and you have to decide that early on. So with this one in particular, we're going from right to left, so the shading is going to be on the left-hand side, and that's exactly what I'm doing. This is called color mapping, so I'm just kind of giving myself an idea where it's going to go. So for starters, I'm going to lay out this rose color and do a slight little bit of color mapping before I go towards my shade. Just remember that the closer the hair is to the face, the more the shade is going to show up because the light's not hitting it from that direction. So that was the rose color for the midtone, and then this is the, I believe it's mahogany color, and that's kind of my shade, but it's not my darkest tone, so that gives the hint that it's it's in the shady area, but it's not the darkest color. It's not gonna be as in-depth as it is once I get this grape on, because you'll see the punch that the darkest tone gives right here. So it's really about layering and working with the light, and really it's, I have said this time and time again that one of the greatest keys to especially rendering faces and hair and everything is to know where the light hits, how to apply the shadow and the light, and how much contrast you want. Now here I'm going in with the cream color to add in the highlights and give it that extra kick that it needs with the highlights. And although the cream color may not seem like a very frugal choice or natural choice, you also layer on top of it, you see. So you got that nice contrast, and then I go back over it with the coral and kind of blend it in. And I also recommend working in sections like I am here, so that they all make up a whole. And especially with straight hair, it can get a little tedious, but working in sections enables you to figure out how the hair works and how it falls and how it tends to look more natural if you work in sections rather than being really choppy about it. So as I said before, I'm adding this coral in here, and it's kind of this pink color, and that gives it a nice blending smooth from light to the mid-tone. That gives it a little bit more natural look to the cream as well. So don't be afraid to try out different colors and be more experimental. It doesn't have to be with this particular color. Now here I'm going back in with the mahogany, and I'm adding in shade, and what I'm planning to do later is to put in that mid-tone, put in those highlights, and really make that gradient. It's about gradients. I'm adding more coral in to give it that smooth graduation of color. And there's that rose. It's that fabulous rose color. I keep saying that I need to dye my hair this color. I intend to one day whenever I get the guts. I'm a redhead, so I like to stick with copper and stuff, but this is a beautiful shade. And light strokes, just very nice light, not a lot of pressure. That'll give it more of a natural look. Now I'm going back in with the Prismacolor Colorless blender and smoothing it out, smoothing those gradations of color so that they look more natural. One tip I do want to recommend is to not overblend because that can kind of give it a muddier look than what you want for hair, especially. You might want to overblend with other things like skin tones and things like that. That's different, but this is hair that we're talking about, so we want it to look natural and not too painterly. And like I said, this midtone, what I love to do is I love to add those shades and the highlights and then go back into the midtones. Really nice short little strokes of that midtone going back into that coral and giving it that nice smooth application. And, you know, little choppy streaks to kind of give the reminder that it's still hair. Um, I'll admit that hair is tricky. It's going to be tricky if you've not quite worked with it too much, but you'll get there. And you just got to believe in yourself, you know, practice. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, that the practice makes perfect. So you keep layering, get yourself some really good pencils, and check out my video on my 3 favorite pencils. And this is one of my favorite pencils, it's the Holbein. Because you can keep layering and layering and you don't have that wax bloom. It's oil based. Um, this is a really fantastic set of pencils. And so what I love to do at the very end is kind of go back in and add in some more shade, get the darkest shade up by the hairline and where the appropriate shading is, and those little cruxes and those little crooks in, um, what do they call it, crooks and eggs? I don't know. It's late, people, I'm sorry. But hopefully you'll follow what I'm telling you just by the demonstration and by what I've mentioned here. So you can see that all these little tips and tricks will add up to a whole whenever you get everything going. And it'll take time. It takes time and patience. That's another trick, is that you don't want to rush it. You cannot rush colored pencils. They will fight you if you, they will resist you if you try to rush them. And just as a little last touch, just adding these strands, these loose strands, to give it a much more natural finish. Nobody's hair lays that perfectly uniform. We all know this. Not unless you've got stylists. So I hope that you have found this very informative, and you will like and comment and share and let me know what your tips are for drawing hair. Drawing pink hair. If you've ever drawn pink hair, let me know what you think. Um, so let's go on and start from the beginning. This is color mapping. And this is where I'm taking the time to give myself a guide as to where my shades are going to go. And, you know, for every piece that I do, it's kind of like I kind of start intuitively with what I want. I'm not going to say that there's just one right way to start with color mapping with midtones or shades or highlights, but I typically go with shades or highlights because I like to know where the light is going to fall. That gives you a good visual and a good starting point. And so here I'm going back in with the rose color as the midtone. And I'm going to lay down the first layer of the bangs. Um, this is where you don't have to get real super heavy with your application. You kind of slowly build the layers with hair because it really will help with a natural look. And it doesn't look like much at the beginning, but that's okay, because it will eventually, as you put more layers on and you put more shade and you put more highlights in the appropriate places and you build, it will become more natural and it won't look so forced. I also want to note, as I mentioned earlier, the short wispy strokes will give you that nice clean look that that straight hair has. So I'm going to speed it up just a little bit and show you how over time color mapping can really give you that idea that you want, and you slowly build. And I sound like a broken record, but it's so true. And you know, you can kind of give the shape, and you work on the shape of the hair, not the individual strands. Now I'm going to go back in there and add some in-depth, a little bit more shade in the cruxes of the hair where the darkest tones will be. where I know that the hair will lay and layer. And this is kind of where you have to use your imagination if you're not using a photo reference, which can be really fun. And then I'm going back in and I'm kind of shaping out where the highlights are going to be, building the layers with the midtones. That rose color was just absolutely fantastic. They should have named it raspberry. It was great. And right up by the hairline, that low light of sea fog really adds a kick. And I apologize about my camera settings. I'm in the market for a new camera, and so I tried to get this within the correct settings. On my camera doesn't do a time lapse unless it's in the miniature setting with the Canon ELF 330. So bear with me, but with what I did try to do well. So from here on, you can enjoy it. Go ahead and like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Enjoy the video.